I held the cup with trembling hands as I watched my grandfather take the last sip. The same medicine he had used on me for years, now sliding down his throat. He looked at me confused, trying to understand why he was getting dizzy so fast. "What did you do, boy?" Those were his last words before collapsing on the couch. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my phone and called the number I had memorized weeks ago. When they arrived and saw the lifeless body in the living room, they smiled. "Leave it to us," they said. I knew exactly what they would do to him. And for the first time in years, I was able to sleep without nightmares. My name is Lucas. I'm 19 years old and left 8 months ago from the juvenile detention center, where I spent 2 years of my life. When people heard my story on the news, they called me a monster. They said what I did to my grandfather was beyond any human limit. That delivering a 68-year-old man, drugged and defenseless, to a local gang was an act of indescribable cruelty. And maybe they're right. But before you judge me, before you close this video and call me the worst names you can think of, I need you to understand one thing. Nobody is born wanting to destroy another person. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to ruin the life of someone in their own family for no reason. I was 13 years old when I started taking Grandpa's medicine. That's what he called it. "Come here, Lucas. Time for your little medicine." I didn't know what it was. I only knew that after taking it, everything became confusing, hazy, and when I woke up, I was in my bed with my body aching and my mind empty. For 4 years, that repeated itself. 4 years of my adolescence stolen by someone who was supposed to protect me. 4 years of nights I can't fully remember, but that left marks that will never fade. The judge said what I did was disproportionate and barbaric revenge. The prosecutor called me a young man without remorse. The media painted my grandfather as an innocent victim, an elderly man who was brutalized by a disturbed grandson. But nobody wanted to hear what happened in that house for years. Nobody wanted to investigate why a 17-year-old boy reached the point of doing what I did. Today, in my small apartment that I share with a roommate, I try to rebuild my life. I work at a grocery store, wake up at 5 in the morning, come back tired. It's a simple life, but it's mine. And for the first time since I was 13, it's a life where I sleep without fear. I'm going to tell you everything, every detail, every lost night, every frustrated attempt to ask for help, every moment that led me to that decision. And in the end, you decide if I'm really a monster or if I did the only thing within my reach when all other paths were blocked. If you're really paying attention to my story and want to understand what led me to do this, I need you to do something for me now. Like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any account, and comment where you're watching from. This shows me there's someone willing to hear my truth until the end, and I promise that what comes next will make you understand why I had no other choice. But for that, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to take you to that house, to that family, to the moment when everything started to fall apart. My story begins in an ordinary way. Too ordinary, perhaps. Single mother, father I never met, living in a simple house in the suburbs of Houston. My mother, Carla, worked as a cashier at a supermarket. Long shifts, short salary, but she always tried to give me the best she could. I remember my first years as good times. She would arrive tired, but always with a smile for me. Always with some funny story from work, always interested in how my day at school had been. It was just the two of us against the world, and that was enough. But in 2017, when I was 11 years old, things started to change. My mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. Medical appointments became frequent. Medications, expensive. The salary that was already tight started not being enough. I saw my mother cry for the first time when she looked at the accumulated bills on the kitchen table. That's when my grandfather Paul entered our life. No, wait. Let me rephrase that. That's when my grandfather returned to our life, because he always existed but never cared about us. My mother had a complicated relationship with him. They had drifted apart when she got pregnant with me. He didn't accept that she was going to have a child from a bum who disappeared, as he used to say. For 11 years, we had no contact with him. My mother never talked much about the past, but I knew there was hurt there. Something that hurt too much to be touched. But when the financial situation got tight, he was the one who showed up. I don't know how he found out we were going through difficulties. Maybe some distant relative told him. Maybe he looked into it. But one day, he simply knocked on our door. "I came to help," he said. Family is family, no matter what happened in the past. My mother hesitated. I saw on her face that internal struggle, that pain of having to swallow her pride and accept help from someone who had hurt her. But the bills don't stop coming, and the body doesn't stop needing medicine. So she accepted. At first, it was just financial help. He paid some bills, bought my mother's medications, sometimes brought food. He didn't live with us. He had his own house on the other side of the city. But he visited more and more. And me? I thought it was amazing. I finally had a father figure in my life. Someone who took me to play football on weekends, who taught me to fix things, who talked to me about school. My grandfather Paul was tall, strong for his age, always with that smell of cheap cologne mixed with cigarettes. He had very short gray hair and brown eyes that seemed kind. "You're a smart boy, Lucas," he would say. "You're going to go far in life. You just need someone to guide you right." My mother was happy seeing us get along. I think she wanted to believe that people changed, that maybe her father had matured with age, that he was really trying to fix the mistakes of the past. But gradually, the visits became longer. After a few months, he suggested moving into our house. "It's easier to help you guys," he argued, "and my house is too big for an old man alone. Here I have company." My mother agreed. After all, he was paying half the expenses, and I was happy. I was going to have my grandfather living with us. What an idiot I was. The move happened at the beginning of 2018. He brought few things: a suitcase of clothes, some personal items, a box he kept locked and never let anyone see. "They're old things, mementos," he would say when I asked. The first months were normal. He woke up early, made coffee for everyone, talked during breakfast. In the afternoon, while my mother worked, we were alone. He helped me with homework. We watched TV together. He told stories from when he was young. But I started noticing small, strange things. The way he looked at me sometimes, when he thought I wasn't paying attention. How he always found excuses to come into the bathroom when I was taking a shower. "I forgot my towel. I need to get a medicine from the cabinet." How he insisted that I sit on his lap while we watched TV, even though I was already 12 years old and too big for that. "Stop being fussy, boy. I'm your grandfather. What's wrong with it?" And I, wanting to please, wanting to have that father figure I never had, accepted everything. Swallowed the discomfort. Ignored that little voice in my head saying something was wrong. Until one night, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. I remember because it was the day of the Texans game on the radio, and my grandfather was listening in the kitchen. My mother had taken an extra shift at work. She would only return the next morning. It was just me and him at home. "Lucas, come here," he called me. "I made hot chocolate for us." I thought it was strange because it wasn't cold. We were in March, full heat of Houston. But I went. On the kitchen table, 2 steaming mugs. "Drink it while it's hot," he insisted, pushing one toward me. I drank. It was too sweet, with a bitter taste at the end that I couldn't identify. But I didn't want to complain. I drank it all while he watched, smiling. Good boy. Always so obedient. 15 minutes later, I started feeling strange. Heavy head, wobbly legs. The kitchen started spinning. "Grandpa, I'm not feeling well." "It's just tiredness, boy. Come, I'll take you to bed." He carried me. I remember the smell of cologne. I remember the strong arms holding me. I remember trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come out right. And then, I can't remember anything until the next morning. I woke up in my bed, wearing the same clothes, but feeling wrong, dirty. My body hurt in places it shouldn't hurt, and that bitter taste was still in my mouth. My grandfather was making breakfast normally, whistling a song. "Good morning, champ. Did you sleep well? You passed out yesterday, huh? You must be growing, body needing rest." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't understand what. I was only 12 years old. I didn't have words for that. That was the first of many Grandpa's medicines. After that first night, I spent weeks trying to understand what had happened. My 12-year-old mind couldn't process it. I only knew there were big holes in my memory, that my body hurt in ways I didn't understand, and that looking at my grandfather gave me a tightness in my chest that I couldn't name. But he acted as if nothing had happened, as if he were the perfect, attentive, caring grandfather, and I, not understanding what was wrong, started to think I had imagined everything, that it was just a very realistic nightmare. until it happened again. 2 weeks later, my mother was going to spend the night at a sick friend's house. "You'll be okay with Grandpa, right, Lucas? You're already a big boy." "Of course, Mom. You can go." That night, my grandfather made soup. "To warm up," he said, even though it was 82 degrees outside. And in that soup was the same bitter taste as the hot chocolate. This time I tried to refuse. "I'm not hungry, Grandpa." "Don't be rude, boy. I made it with care for you. Drink it." His voice changed. It became harder, more threatening. It was no longer the kind grandfather. It was someone else, wearing his mask. I drank. And I woke up the next day not remembering anything after the third sip, but with my body screaming truths that my mind refused to accept. It went on like this for months. Whenever my mother went out, whenever we were alone for too long, that drink appeared. Hot chocolate, juice, tea, soup. The taste was always the same. And the result, too. I started having nightmares. Flashes of images that didn't make sense. Hands touching me. Voices whispering things I didn't want to hear. I would wake up sweaty, shaking, unable to go back to sleep. My grades at school started to drop. Before I was an average student, nothing exceptional, but I passed everything. Now I couldn't concentrate. Teachers sent notes home. My grandfather read them and tore them up in front of me. "Your mother doesn't need to know about this nonsense. She already has enough problems. This stays between us, right?" And there was always that tone, that unspoken suggestion that bad things would happen if I told. So I agreed. I always agreed. When I turned 13 in September 2018, things got worse. My body was changing, entering adolescence, and my grandfather became bolder. The doses of medicine increased. The sessions, as I later discovered he called them, became more frequent. I started avoiding him. I made excuses to stay out, at friends' houses, anywhere that wasn't that house. But he always found a way to have me alone. "Your mother asked you to stay home today," he would lie. "She said you're out too much." Or, "Don't be ungrateful, boy. After everything I do for you guys, you can't give me attention?" And the worst part? He used my mother's love against me. "If you tell your mother anything, she's going to get sick with worry. The stress could worsen her diabetes. Do you want her to get sick? Do you want to be responsible for that?" I was 13 years old. How was I going to carry that weight? How could I risk my mother's health? So I swallowed everything. The disgust, the fear, the anger. I swallowed it and pretended everything was fine, but my body started screaming what my mouth couldn't say. I developed an ulcer. The pains were intense, but I lied, saying it was just a stomachache. I lost weight, almost 18 pounds in 3 months. My mother got worried, took me to the doctor. He prescribed medications, ordered tests, said it was stress. "Stress from what?" "You're a child," my mother said, confused. My grandfather, beside her, squeezed my shoulder too hard. "Teenage stuff. Hormones, it'll pass." I tried to ask for help once. Just once. It was at school. We had a psychologist who visited once a month. She came to my class to talk about bullying and abuse. She explained that if anyone was going through something like that, they could talk to her privately. I gathered courage. I waited for everyone to leave. I stayed behind. "Mrs. Andrea, I think something is happening to me." She looked at me attentively. "You can talk, Lucas. It's confidential." And I tried. I swear I tried. But the words wouldn't come out. How was I going to explain something I didn't fully understand myself? How was I going to talk about the holes in my memory, about waking up in pain, about that bitter taste? It's about my grandfather. He gives me medicine and I..." "Your grandfather gives you medicine? For what?" "I don't know. He says it's to help me sleep better, but then I don't remember anything," and she frowned. "Lucas, does your grandfather live with you?" "Yes." "And does your mother know about this medicine?" I hesitated. "No. He said not to tell." Mrs. Andrea sighed. "Look, Lucas, sometimes grandparents give home remedies, natural sedatives, those things. If you're worried, the best thing is to talk to your mother, okay? She'll know how to guide you." "But it's not just the medicine, it's that afterwards I wake up and..." "Wake up and what?" I don't remember anything, and my body hurts." She gently took my arm. "Lucas, you're 13 years old. Your body is growing. It's normal to feel pain. It's normal to have deep sleep. But if you're worried about something, talk to your mother, okay? She's the one who can really help you." And she dismissed me, thinking it was teenage paranoia, hormones, growth. That was my only attempt to ask for help. After that, I gave up. If not even the adults prepared to deal with this could understand, who would? The months passed. 2018 became 2019. I was 13 going on 14, and I was no longer the same person. The happy boy who loved playing football had become a quiet, withdrawn teenager who avoided eye contact and lived with headphones on. My mother noticed something was wrong, but couldn't identify what. "Lucas, you're so different, so closed off. Did something happen at school? Is someone bullying you?" "No, Mom, everything's fine." My grandfather, beside her, smiled. "It's the age, Carla. Teenagers are like that. Weren't you the same?" And she believed it. Because he was convincing. Because he paid the bills. Because it was easier to believe it was just a phase than to admit something much worse was happening under her own roof. At some point in 2019, I started having very dark thoughts. I looked at the bedroom window. We lived on the 3rd floor, and thought how easy it would be. One step, just one step, and everything would be over. But I couldn't. I thought about my mother, what it would do to her. She had already lost so much, she couldn't lose her son, too. So I endured. One more day. One more session. One more hole in my memory. One more morning waking up hating my own body. I developed a defense mechanism. Dissociation. I learned to mentally disconnect. When I saw my grandfather preparing those drinks, my mind already started to distance itself, as if I were watching everything from afar, happening to someone else. It was the only way I found to survive. In 2020, when the pandemic started, things got even worse. My mother had to work more. Essential services didn't stop. I stayed home more, with him. Online classes were a joke. I would join the calls, turn off the camera, mute the microphone, and stay there, looking at the screen without processing anything. Teachers complained. My grades plummeted. I failed 9th grade. "It's the pandemic," my grandfather explained to my mother. "All kids are like this. He'll recover." And she, tired from working amid sanitary chaos, worried about her own health, believed it. Nobody saw. Nobody understood. I was screaming in silence and everyone was deaf. It was during the pandemic that something inside me started to change. The anger I pushed down started to leak. I started having violent fantasies, imagining ways to make him pay. They weren't thoughts I sought. They just appeared, like a defense of my breaking mind. I saw knives in the kitchen and thought about plunging them into him. I saw him sleeping on the couch and imagined a pillow over his face. I saw heavy traffic and fantasized about pushing him in front of a car. They were scary thoughts, but they were also the only thoughts that made me feel some power, some control over my own life. I was 15 years old and already completely destroyed inside, but my grandfather, he was satisfied. He had molded me exactly as he wanted, obedient, silent, broken. Until one day I started researching. I used the school computer. I couldn't risk the history on my phone or home computer. I searched about those drinks, that bitter taste, those memory holes. That's when I discovered benzodiazepines, flunitrazepam, medications that caused deep sedation, anterograde amnesia, muscle relaxation, medications known as date rape drugs. I read accounts from other victims, people who went through what I went through. And finally, I understood. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't imagination. It was real. Everything was real. And my grandfather had been drugging me for years to abuse me. That discovery was liberating and devastating at the same time. Liberating because I wasn't crazy. Devastating because now I had to face the complete truth of what was happening. And with that truth came a cold clarity. Nobody was going to save me. I had to save myself. The discovery about the medications changed everything. It didn't make me act immediately. I'm not impulsive like that, but it lit something inside me. A flame of anger that started small and kept growing, until it consumed everything. I started observing my grandfather differently. No longer as the threatening figure that controlled me, but as a target. I studied his habits, his routine, his weaknesses. He kept the medications in a locked box in his closet. I knew because I saw him getting them once. But where was the key? I searched discreetly. It took weeks until I found it, inside an old book on the living room shelf, a book nobody ever opened. I took the key, made a copy at a locksmith on the corner, returned it the same day. He never noticed. Now I had access to the weapon he used against me, and an idea started to form. For months, I just observed. I didn't touch anything. I just wanted to have the option, the control, knowing that, if I wanted to, I could. 2021 passed. I turned 16. I repeated ninth grade again. I didn't even try hard. My mother was worried, but too exhausted to do much beyond talks about applying yourself more. My grandfather continued the theater of worried grandpa, and the sessions continued. Now I understood what was happening, which made everything worse. I no longer had ignorance to protect me. I knew exactly what he did while I was unconscious. Dissociation continued being my only defense, but the anger grew. Fed with every forced sip, every morning waking up hating myself, every day having to live under the same roof as my abuser. The breaking point came in March 2022. I was 17, almost 18. It was my birthday. My mother had managed to get a day off from work, a miracle. She prepared a cake, invited some distant cousins. It was an almost good afternoon, almost normal. My grandfather was especially caring that day, making a point of hugging me in front of everyone, making those speeches about how good it is to have my grandson growing strong and healthy, posing for photos with me. I saw my mother smiling, happy to see the family united. And something inside me broke definitively. At night, when everyone left and my mother went to sleep, he came, as he always came. Lucas, I made special hot chocolate to celebrate. I looked at that mug, at that liquid I knew was contaminated, and for the first time I said no. I'm not going to drink it. His smile died. What? I said I'm not going to drink it, Grandpa. I don't feel like it. He approached, more intimidating, more threatening. You're being rude, boy, on your birthday, after everything I've done for you. Everything you've done for me? The voice came out louder than I intended. You call that doing something for me? I saw panic pass quickly through his eyes. He understood. He understood that I knew. Lower your voice. Your mother is sleeping. Maybe it's time for her to wake up. He grabbed my arm hard. You're not going to do any of that. Because if you do, I'm going to tell her you're a liar. A problematic teenager who makes up stories for attention, and she'll believe me. You know why? Because I take care of her. I pay her bills. I'm necessary. And you? You're just a burden she carries. Those words were like knives, because part of me believed them. He let me go. Now go to your room, and tomorrow we'll talk when you're calmer. I went to my room, but not to obey, to think. He was right about one thing. My mother would probably believe him. He had spent 4 years building that image of perfect grandfather. I had no proof, no physical evidence, just my word against his. And my word was worth nothing. It was that night, lying in the dark, that the plan started to take shape. If I couldn't expose him, if I couldn't make him pay through the system, then I would have to use other means. In the following days, I stayed quiet. I went back to being obedient Lucas. I apologized for the outburst, said I was stressed about school. My grandfather accepted the apology with a victorious smile. He thought he had put me back in his place. But while I pretended submission, I was planning. First stage, access to the medications. I already had that with the copy of the key. Second stage, opportunity. I needed a moment when I could act without being interrupted. Third stage, and this was the hardest, what to do with him afterwards. Killing him would be easy, an overdose of his own medications, but it would be investigated, and I would be the first suspect. No, I needed something different, something that seemed an accident, or better, something where the blame fell on others. That's when I remembered something a school classmate had mentioned months ago. He had a cousin involved with the local drug trade. He commented about how they dealt with debtors and enemies, creative ways to make people disappear or wish they had disappeared. The idea was disturbing, but it was also perfect. It took weeks for me to have the courage to take the next step. I looked for that classmate Raphael at school. Dude, Do you remember you mentioned your cousin? The one in the game? Raphael was immediately defensive. Why? I need to talk to him about a job. What kind of job? I hesitated. The kind that you guys do. When someone needs to learn a lesson. Raphael studied me. Are you serious? You, Lucas? The good boy? Will you help me or not? He thought for a long moment. Is someone threatening you? Some serious problem? Very serious. Okay, but if you're thinking of doing something stupid, I don't want to be involved. It's not stupid. It's survival. Raphael ended up giving me a number. Talk to Dino. Say it was me who referred you. But Lucas, be careful with what you're going to ask for, because these people don't play around, understand? I understood, and that was exactly why I was looking for them. It took me 2 more weeks to gather courage to call. When I finally called, my hands were shaking. Hello? Is this Dino? Raphael gave me your contact. Who's Raphael? His cousin. You're in... I lowered my voice. You know. Silence. Then, what do you want? I need a service. What kind of service? How did I explain that? There's a person who deserves to pay for something they did. Be clearer, kid. I took a deep breath. I need you to take someone and do what you do with people who deserve it. Another silence. You're talking about a hit? No, not kill. Worse than killing. I want this person to suffer. A lot. And then survive knowing what was done. That's dirty work, kid. Costs a lot. I don't have money. But I can deliver the person. Unconscious. Defenseless. You can do whatever you want. He laughed, a humorless laugh. You know what you're asking for? I do. And who is this person? My grandfather. Longer silence. Your grandfather? Damn, kid. What did the old man do to you? Things I can't talk about on the phone, but he deserves it. Believe me. Look, normally I don't get into family drama, but you've piqued my curiosity. Let's meet. I want to hear your story. Then we'll see. We arranged to meet at a distant square. 3 days later, I was there. Dino showed up with another guy, younger, who he didn't introduce. I told everything, every detail. The medications, the memory holes, the 4 years of abuse. I saw their expressions change from skepticism to genuine disgust. Son of a bitch, the younger guy spat. Dino shook his head. Look, kid, we do a lot of wrong things. I'm no saint, but there are lines even we don't cross, and abusing children is one of those lines. So, will you help me? We will, but not for money. We'll do this for free, because people like your grandfather don't deserve to breathe the same air as us. He explained how it would be. I would deliver my grandfather drugged at a location they indicated. They would take him, bring him to a place they used for conversations with traitors and debtors. And there, well, I didn't need to know the details, but he wouldn't die. He would live, with the marks, and with the memories. And then we'll drop the old man at some hospital, anonymous. He won't remember where he was or who did it. But he'll remember what was done. It was perfect. Cruel, yes. Monstrous, maybe. But perfect. We scheduled it for 2 weeks later. Enough time for me to prepare everything. The chosen day was a Saturday in May 2022, 2 weeks after I turned 18. My mother was going to her sister's house to spend the weekend. Rare thing, but she needed that time. And I needed the opportunity. On Friday night, using the copy of the key, I entered my grandfather's room while he was in the bathroom. I took the medications, flunitrazepam 2-maltgirmern. I took 5 pills, ground them into powder. On Saturday, my mother left at 10 a.m. It was just me and him. I acted normal all morning, even kind. My grandfather was satisfied, thinking I had gone back to being the good boy. In the afternoon, I offered to make a snack for both of us. I made sandwiches and orange juice. In his, I mixed the powder. 5 pills, enough to knock out an adult for hours. How thoughtful, boy, he said, biting the sandwich. You've been so strange lately. Good to see you going back to normal. I drank my juice. He drank his. 20 minutes later, he started getting drowsy. I'm feeling Weird. It's the heat, Grandpa. Lie down on the couch a bit. He lay down. 10 minutes later, he was completely passed out. I stood there looking at him. At that man who had destroyed my life, who had stolen my adolescence, my innocence, my peace. I felt nothing. No remorse, no doubt. Just calculated coldness. I grabbed my phone, called Dinho. You can come, he's ready. They arrived in 15 minutes. A white van without plates. They came in, saw my grandfather unconscious on the couch, and smiled. Good work, kid. They carried him to the van. Before leaving, Dinho looked at me. Are you sure about this? There's no going back after. I'm absolutely sure. All right, we'll take care of him. You don't want to know where or what, okay? The less you know, the better. Okay. And kid, you don't know us. We were never here. If anyone asks, your grandfather left the house in the afternoon and didn't come back. Got it? Got it. They left. With my grandfather unconscious in the van, I cleaned everything, washed the cups, the plates, removed any evidence of the medication, threw the rest of the pills in the toilet, returned the empty box to his room, and then I sat on the couch, in the same place where he had been minutes ago. And finally, for the first time in years, I breathed. Free. My grandfather was found 3 days later on an abandoned lot on the outskirts of Houston. He was alive. Technically, the news said he had been the victim of a kidnapping and torture for unknown motivation, that he was in serious but stable condition at the hospital, that police were investigating possible connections to organized crime. My mother was devastated. She cried for days, couldn't understand who would do that to an innocent elderly man. I pretended shock. I pretended concern. I accompanied her on hospital visits in the first weeks. My grandfather was unrecognizable. The details of what was done to him were kept confidential by the police, but doctors talked about severe trauma and need for reconstructive surgeries. He was kept in an induced coma for 2 weeks. When he woke up, he was no longer the same person. He had lost the ability to speak coherently, neurological damage. He got agitated when he saw unknown men. He had panic attacks. The doctors called it severe psychological trauma associated with PTSD. I knew exactly what it was. He was feeling what I felt for fear, the helplessness, the violation, the feeling of having your body and mind invaded without permission. Did I feel something? Yes. Relief. The police interrogated me, of course, along with my mother and other relatives. They asked about his routine, possible enemies, if he was involved in anything suspicious. I said I didn't know anything, that he was a normal grandfather, that he was home when I left to meet some friends in the afternoon, and when I came back at night, he wasn't there anymore. They believed me. Why wouldn't they? I was an 18-year-old teenager, no criminal record, no connections to crime, just a concerned grandson. But someone didn't believe. A more persistent investigator, Detective Carvalho. He showed up at our house 3 weeks after the incident. He wanted to talk to me, privately. My mother hesitated but allowed it. We went to the kitchen. Lucas, I'm going to be direct with you. Your story doesn't add up. I felt my heart race. What do you mean? You say you left to meet friends in the afternoon, but none of your friends confirm this. You say you came back at night and he wasn't there, but neighbors didn't see your grandfather leaving. They only saw a strange van stopping here in the afternoon. I must have gotten confused about the time. And there's something else. We found traces of flunitrazepam in your grandfather's blood. A lot. Amount that could only have been ingested voluntarily or forced. And curiously, his medicine box, which he kept locked, was empty when we checked. I kept calm. I don't know anything about that. He approached. Look, kid, I know something happened in this house. I know there's more to the story. And I know that somehow you're involved. But without concrete evidence, my hands are tied. I don't know what you're talking about, he sighed. Okay. But eventually, this comes back. It always comes back. He was right. 3 months later, Rafael, that classmate who connected me with Dinho, was arrested for something else. And in negotiations to reduce his sentence, he gave information. He mentioned my name. Mentioned that I had sought contact with the movement. Mentioned the story about my grandfather. In July 2022, 2 months after executing the plan, I was arrested. The charges: aggravated kidnapping, criminal association, and extremely serious bodily harm. The trial was quick. My defense tried to argue that I was a victim of prolonged abuse, that I was in extreme psychological distress. They brought psychologists, tried to build a case of emotional self-defense. But it didn't work, because I had no proof of the abuse, and there was too much proof of my planning, the calls to Dinho, Raphael's testimony, security cameras showing the van. My lawyer tried for a deal. "You were a minor when you started planning," he argued. "We can try juvenile justice." But the judge didn't accept. He said the crime was committed when I was already 18, that the level of premeditation and cruelty demonstrated full awareness of the act. I was sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile detention center for young offenders with possibility of progression of regime. My mother was in shock. She couldn't understand. To her, I was the grandson who tried to hurt the innocent grandfather. I tried to explain, tried to tell about the abuse, but she didn't believe it. "How can you make up such a lie, Lucas? Your grandfather always loved you, took care of you, and you did this to him." She never spoke to me again after the sentence, never visited, never answered my letters. I spent 2 years in the detention center. It wasn't easy. Inside, when others found out why I was there, the boy who delivered his own grandfather to a gang, many judged me, called me a monster, but some understood. Other boys who had gone through abuse, who knew that pain, that desperation that takes you to extremes. It was inside that I finally got real therapy. A psychologist, Dr. Helena, who listened to me, who believed, who helped me process the trauma without judging me for the choices I made. "What you did was wrong," she would say, "but what was done to you was also wrong. 2 wrongs don't make a right. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you were a broken person who made a broken decision." Those sessions saved me. That helped me understand that I could be victim and perpetrator, that I could have suffered terribly and made terrible choices, that life isn't black and white. I had good behavior, participated in all resocialization programs. I studied, finally finished high school inside. I worked in the center's library. After 2 years, I got progression of regime. I left on probation 3 months ago. Today, I live in this small apartment. I share it with a guy I met through the resocialization program. I work at a grocery store from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's honest work. Tiring, but honest. I still do therapy, twice a week. I take medication for anxiety and depression. I still have nightmares, not about my grandfather abusing me, but about what I had done to him. Because yes, I have remorse, not for having removed him from my life, but for the way I did it, for the level of cruelty, for the fact that I delivered a human being, however bad he was, to be tortured. Were there paths I could have taken? Maybe. If I had had the courage to insist on asking for help. If I had looked for more authorities. If I had trusted the system more. But I also know the system fails. It failed me when the school psychologist didn't understand. It failed so many other abuse victims I met inside. And in the end, I was just a 17-year-old boy, carrying a 4-year trauma, not knowing how to ask for help the right way. My grandfather survived, technically. He's in a specialized clinic. My mother takes care of him, they say. He didn't fully recover his speech. He lives with severe physical and psychological after effects. Is he paying for his crimes? Yes, in the worst possible way, living with the consequences of what he did reflected back at him. Am I paying for mine? Also. Not just the 2 years I spent detained, but the guilt I carry every day. The lost relationship with my mother. The knowledge that I stained my own soul by responding to violence with even greater violence. Was it justified? I don't know. I ask myself that every night. Was it understandable? Maybe. For those who never went through that, maybe not. But for those who lived years of silent abuse, who felt their body and mind be violated repeatedly, who screamed in silence without anyone hearing, maybe they understand. I don't want anyone to see me as a hero. I wasn't. I was a victim who became a perpetrator. And that's not something to be celebrated. But I also don't want to be seen only as a villain. Because there's context. There's pain. There's a story that led to that decision. What I want is that if someone watching this is going through something similar, know that there are other ways. You don't need to do what I did. You can seek real help. Insist until someone listens. There are specialized police stations. There are support lines. There are people who will believe you. I chose the path of revenge because I thought I had no alternative. And I live with the consequences every day. Don't repeat my mistakes. Even when it seems there's no way out, there is. Even when nobody listens, keep speaking. Because the price of revenge is too high. I recovered my physical freedom. But emotional freedom? I'm still fighting to get that. If you made it this far and understood my entire journey, if you really cared about this story, I need to ask one last thing. Like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next accounts, and comment what time it is where you are right now while you watch this. This shows me there are people who really listen, who don't judge without understanding. And maybe this will help another young person in a similar situation find a better path than mine. Today, at 19 years old, I look back and see a broken boy who made the most extreme decision he could imagine. I can't change the past. I can't undo what I did, but I can try, every day, to be better than that moment defined. I can try to build a life that means something beyond that revenge. And maybe one day I'll be able to forgive myself. Not for what was done to me, that should never have happened, but for what I chose to do in response. This is my story. Traumatic. Complicated. Without happy endings, but it's my truth, and now you know it.